guys, welcome to Cooking with Class. My name is Chef Gooch. Today I've got some of my summer culinary class cooking with us.
Hi, I'm Taylor Jackson. I go to Talkington and I'll be a junior.
Today we're going to be making a Philly cheesesteak, and not just any Philly cheesesteak. We're going to make a lot of it from scratch. We're going to make our own cheese sauce, and then we're going to even try and turn it into our own cheese whiz by putting it into a siphon and spraying it out. It's going to be kind of awesome. Taylor's going to help me out. We're going to start off by julienning our vegetables. Go ahead and get started there. So a Philly cheesesteak traditionally has bell peppers and onions. And so to julienne this onion, Taylor's going to cut the butt and the root off, cut it in half, peel it, and then we're going to turn it sideways and julienne or bâtonnet. So we want it around 1/4 of an inch thick is fine. I wouldn't go too thin. And what you can do, let it fall over like that, and then you can just finish. So once you get it to about there, it's too hard, just flip it over and finish it up. Perfect. And then we'll just throw all these in a bowl so that we can saute them in a minute. There we go. All right, so on the bell pepper, what we're going to do, we're going to shave the sides down. A lot of people like to take and they mess with the core and all the seeds on the inside, but really simple. Taylor's going to show us. We're going to cut the side down, probably in fourths. Yeah, and you don't even have to cut it that close. We can even go a little more shallow and just kind of follow that line right there. So go ahead and cut all those up. Perfect. And that last one you can lay it down if you need to, and that'll make it a little easier. So now we've got the 4 sides. And then one thing we want to do, some of these ribs on the inside, they don't have a whole lot of flavor. They're going to add some bitterness. So we can take our knife and just kind of peel those out. That one and that one would be great. Perfect. And then just use your fingers, peel it out. Set those aside. We'll get assembly line style, get all of them ready, and then we'll go ahead and turn those into some bâtonnets. We want them to be about the same size of our onion, and the reason for that way they'll cook together at the same speed. While she's cutting that up, I've got a cast iron skillet right here that's getting nice and warm. It's cast iron, so I've got it on about medium-low heat. It's holding that heat really well. Throw a little oil in there as soon as she's ready, and we'll saute these at the same time. And then we'll set them aside to assemble our sandwich later. Yeah, sometimes if your knife isn't sharp enough, which that one's pretty sharp, you can flip these over on the other side. You just got to be careful because they get a little wobbly. But if your knife's sharp enough to go through the skin really easily, you don't have to worry about it, and it stays nice and stable. You're at less risk of cutting yourself. There we go. Our knife isn't super flexible, so sometimes it's a little more difficult. Just make sure you're cutting away from yourself, and then get the cut started. And then just kind of pull away. Yeah, you just don't want to be cutting into your fingers. But I think you got it. Yeah, once you have those smooth strokes, it cuts a lot easier. If you push down like a guillotine, that's when we have the issues. But as long as you're doing those strokes, it cuts really easy. But if you try and just push down like a guillotine, it's not going to cut no matter how sharp your knife is. Perfect. All right, so now what we're gonna do, we've got a nice wooden spoon for our cast iron. I'll just switch spots here, Taylor, jump over there. So we're gonna do about 2 or 3 tablespoons of oil in that skillet. Go ahead. Just mix it around. Yeah. And then go ahead and mix them around, get those going. We're not looking to get a whole lot of color. We really just want to sweat these veggies. It's going to take a solid 10, 15 minutes of medium to low heat in that cast iron. And we're just looking for them to slightly drain a little bit, get nice and soft. All right, so while Taylor finishes cooking the peppers and onions, we're gonna get started making the cheese sauce. Right here we've got
Micah Pappas, and I'm going to be a senior at Lubbock High School.
Thanks, Micah. Micah's going to be making our cheese sauce. We're making a really traditional one that uses a roux. So first off, he's going to make a roux. Let's go ahead and get that started. We've got equal parts flour and oil. We've got about, what did you say earlier?
A half cup.
Half a cup of oil and flour. This is going to be too much, way more than we need, but we can always set it aside and it'll store for a long time. We can use it later. A bechamel is one of the 5 mother sauces. And this one we're going to be turning into a cheese sauce. So right here we've got some smoked provolone and some American cheese. If you tried to just melt some cheese in some milk, what would end up happening is the cheese just kind of separates and it's a really gross texture, and we don't want that. So we're going to make this roux using a starch. Flour is our starch. It's going to help bind that sauce together. That's probably solid. We'll set that aside. We're going for a really blonde roux. We don't want any color on this. We're not going to cook it. We don't want to flavor the flour. This sauce is mostly the flavor of our cheese. So we'll set this one aside, and then we're going to start heating up some milk. There you go. Get that milk in there.
All of it?
Yeah, go ahead and do all of it. We've got about 3 cups of milk. We're making way too much cheese sauce, but you can never have too much cheese sauce. All right, so what we want, in order to have these two combine without any lumps, we want to add very little roux at a time to our hot milk, but we also want this to be cold. So we've got some roux that Micah made earlier. We're going to use that instead. And once this milk gets warm, we'll add a little bit at a time until we get the right consistency. And me and Micah will help you out with that. All right, looks like our milk is starting to get warm, little bubbles around the edge. So Micah's going to start adding very small amounts of this roux. This is one that he made earlier today. So yeah, about a teaspoon at a time. And what we want to do, we want to whisk that in, and until that is fully incorporated, do we add any more. That will really help us prevent any lumps. So we're just going to get to whisking. And what we're looking for is a consistency called a la nappe. And a best way to describe that is if you stick a spoon into the liquid and pull it out, you can run your finger, nope, see this is milk, still just milk. So it just runs, but it would coat the spoon, you could move your finger through it, and it would kind of hold that streak. So until we get to there, we're going to keep adding a little bit at a time. And if you add too much, we can still fix that if there's some lumps. You can toss it into a blender or use an immersion blender, and that'll help smooth out those lumps. You can also run it through a strainer, but we don't want any of those lumps because those lumps are just kind of concentrated roux. So if you were to get that bite, it'd be kind of gross. Watch your milk. If the heat gets too high, remove it from heat. We don't want it to boil over or scorch. All right, I think Taylor's got the veggies finished. I'll show you what those look like while Micah continues to work on that sauce. There we go. Oh yeah, that looks great. So let's just lean those forward. Here we go. Let's get them into this bowl right here. Perfect. Look at that, super easy to clean up this cast iron skillet. All right, if you'll just wipe that clean, it should be good to go. We'll set our veggies aside for when we assemble our sandwiches. All right, well, Micah finishes up our bechamel, and before we get to turning it into a derivative sauce by adding our cheese, Taylor's gonna work on our meat. One way that we tenderize some cheap cuts is through the shape that we cut the meat. And so we could, you can smash meat to tenderize it, you can grind it. We're gonna cut this really, really finely. So we've had this meat. This is a piece of chuck, which is the shoulder. It's been in the freezer for about 30 minutes, so it's pretty firm, which is gonna really help her cut this. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna start by trimming it a little bit and just giving her a guide. And we'll take some of these smaller pieces. We don't need all that fat that's in there, but what we're gonna do, we're gonna trim this really thin pieces like this. And then we're gonna take these pieces and trim them again into really thin strips. And these really small, thin strips are gonna cook up really fast, and that's gonna help tenderize this chuck. If we were to try and cook this big chuck roast on a grill, it would be a terrible steak, okay? We'd have to tenderize it one way or another, and this is how we're gonna tenderize it. You can use all different cuts. If you want to start with something that's more expensive and already kind of tender like ribeye, you can, but Philly cheesesteak works really well with a cheaper cut, and so that's what we're going to do, some chuck. So if you want to, Taylor, you can cut this one the same way I just started. We want to try and cut against the grain, so we're looking for these, you can see the musculature run in that direction, so we're going to cut it this way to start, and then we'll trim it that way, okay? Go ahead. Yeah, and try and do long strokes. Use the whole length of that blade. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. And if you want to, I do a pull. So you can start it right here. Start with the heel of the blade and then just pull all the way back. And this knife is sharp enough, just one pull like that will cut all the way through. Especially on something like meat though, we can't just push down. Micah, how's the bechamel?
It's getting pretty stinking thick over here.
Okay. Let me go wash this meat off my hands and we'll take a look. Yeah, so what we're looking for here is just nappe. So now you can look at this sauce. You can see that we can run our finger through it and it doesn't kind of streak. There are a couple little lumps and that's okay. Let's go ahead and, I don't want to blend it. We can just strain those out really quick into a fresh pan. And then we want to turn the heat off anyways, because if the heat is on when you start adding your cheese, you're going to have a problem. Actually, you know what? On second thought, it'll help blend it. We can get a stick blender, an immersion blender, and we can blend out the lumps, turn the heat off, and that'll help blend the cheese in as well. Yeah, so let's do that. We're going to grab an immersion blender. All right, so Mike has got the immersion blender out. Let's go ahead. Tilt the pan up a little bit, blend that up, and some of that roux, because it hasn't been incorporated, it might thicken your sauce a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that first and just see what it looks like. I have turned the heat off, by the way. Yeah, don't splatter us with that hot milk, hot bechamel. Is all good?
Looks good.
You know what, let's grab this. Let's scrape the sides really quick of that pot and make sure we get everything. How's it coming along, Taylor?
It's great.
So Taylor's come across some connective tissue that's kind of hard to cut through. Sometimes we call that silver skin, but sometimes this stuff will just kind of peel with your hands and that's fine. But if we have to, yeah, right there, there's a piece running through this right here. Yeah. We can just set some of those pieces aside as trash, that's okay. That's probably good, Micah. Let's throw in a big slice of the provolone and maybe like 2 or 3 of the cubes. Yeah, like 4 cubes. I lied, 4 cubes. There we go. Just use your whisk that up a little bit. Again, the heat is off. If your heat is on, your cheese will get too hot, it'll separate. One of the reasons I'm using some American cheese today is that's just gonna help with the consistency and the texture. We want this to be kind of a loose sauce. We're gonna use a fun little tool today called a whipping siphon. And so you've probably seen these at coffee shops. That's how they make whipped cream really fast at some restaurants or coffee shops. So you put some cream in here, some vanilla, sugar, whatever, and then we're gonna charge it with CO2. And so you get this on really tight, and you put a CO2 canister in here, and it's gonna aerate our cheese sauce, and it's gonna come out just like Cheese Whiz, I hope.
What if it doesn't?
I've never done this before, so it'll be fun. Either way, we'll still have some cheese sauce for our sandwiches. So I'm gonna help Taylor out. There's some big lines of fat in here, and we don't want too much of that on our cheesesteak. So we can trim some of this out. Some of that's garbage, some of it's not. You can trim that one up. And just look out for some of those big, gnarly pieces of silver skin, or the really firm fat, like this right here. Yeah, that's really, really hard. That stuff is easy to get off of the rest of our meat, so we can trim that up. Sometimes it'll just peel with your hands, see? Like that right there. And then we can trim those little good pieces of meat off. It's a little more work with this cheaper cut of meat, but we save a lot of money. Yeah, there you go.
I think we're ready for some more cheese, Chef.
Yeah, let's go ahead. I think, yeah, 4 more and 1 more slice. Do that, and then we'll give it a taste. We'll season it with some salt, maybe a little pepper, and we'll see where we're at. All right, give that a taste, Micah. Tell me what it needs. Do we need salt? Do we need pepper? It's looking pretty cheesy.
I think we could use a little pepper, maybe a tiny bit of salt. It's already a little
Yeah,
salty from
the cheese might add a little seasoning, so let's do that. All right, go ahead, blend that up. We'll taste it again. Clean spoon. Is that better?
It's good.
All right.
A lot better.
I think we've got a funnel around here. Let's grab a ladle, and then we'll try and ladle it in. I don't want to put it all in at once, and we'll try and test this out really quick while Taylor finishes the meat.
This more than cutting the chicken.
While Micah finishes the cheese sauce, we're gonna go ahead and start warming up the same cast iron skillet so that we can toast our buns and then cook this meat, and then we're gonna put it all together. All right, guys, we are ready to finish off our sandwiches and then assemble. So we're gonna toast these buns. These are just some bolillo rolls that I picked up from the local bakery. Any sort of hoagie or sub bun would work for this. So Taylor's going to, we don't wanna go all the way in half, so we're just gonna kinda go through the side like this right here, almost to the edge, all right? So if you'll start cutting those open for me, I'm gonna butter them and pass them on to Micah, and he is going to, we got some very soft, almost completely melted butter right here. He's going to toast our buns in a warm cast iron skillet, and then after we're done with this, we will cook all that meat. We'll season it really well. We'll turn the heat up, get a good caramelization on that chuck roast. Looks like we can do about 2 at a time. Perfect. And then we'll assemble. All right, while Micah finishes toasting our buns, Taylor and I are going to cook off this meat. So let's add a good amount of oil to this pan. Get it nice and hot, Taylor. Let's add a little bit more, about 3 to 4 tablespoons. That's perfect. We got a nice sizzle, not too much smoke. Toss it around there. All right, so what we want to do, we're going to get that meat in the pan and then immediately season it, a generous helping of salt, pepper. This works really well on a really big griddle. If you had a griddle, you can use a very large spatula. but we're just gonna do it in our cast iron skillet because it holds the heat really well. So you don't wanna overload your pan too much. That's gonna drop the temp, and then your meat's not gonna get a good sear or caramelization. It's gonna end up being a little too tough. So let's do about one handful at a time. Go ahead. Yeah. And just kind of spread it around. Use these, spread it around a little bit, and I'll season a little bit at a time. We'll just do a little batch at a time. We'll probably, our next batch, we can do a little bit more than that. And then just kind of let it sit, get a good sear, and then we'll toss it around. Perfect. And then when that's done, we can throw it in the bowl. Good, yeah. Let's get a little smoky. We don't have our hood vent above us like Micah has over there, but that's okay. Yeah, just toss it around. So once you get that really good sear on one side, see this right here? It's that nice caramelization on our meat. We're gonna get it on one side for sure, and then just keep tossing. All right, scoop that out, get it in the bowl. Take a look. Keep going, you're good. You got a little taste, make sure we're good. See, that's normally like a really tough cut of meat. It's super tender because of the way we cut it. We're cooking it really fast. We got that good caramelization. It's gonna be great. All right, so in between batches of your meat, let your pan reheat, get nice and hot. It's one of the reasons I love cast iron. It holds that heat really well. We're not gonna waste too much time. I think we're ready, yeah, go ahead. And like I said, a little bit bigger than last time. Spread it around. Yeah, a little bit more, just a little bit. Yeah, perfect. And then make sure it's all touching, that it's not sitting on top of itself. That way the steam isn't what cooks it. And then once we get that, let it sit. We'll season a good amount of salt and pepper. We're gonna let that sit and caramelize, then we'll give it a little toss, and then we'll just keep it going. How are those buns coming along? Nice, we got some good caramelization like that right there. And we just want to make sure that, yeah, some of these get turned over, flipped a little bit. Great. That's all right. Yeah, some of these are not completely cooked all the way through. That's fine. They're going to finish cooking in this bowl. And it'll carry over, cook. It'll be okay. Looks like Micah's coming back over with the buns, and we are ready to assemble some of our sandwiches. Awesome. All right, all of our components are ready to assemble our sandwiches. Again, it's a really easy sandwich, and I hope you can make one of these at home. We've got some really nice buns here. I'm gonna start off with the meat and just kind of layer that in there. On the bottom, lots of meat, okay? And then we'll follow up with peppers and onions. And then last, our homemade Cheese Whiz. You can buy Cheese Whiz in a can. You can just use a cheese sauce. You don't have to be this fancy. Hopefully this works. That is awesome. I did get a little on my hand, but that's great. All right, let's assemble another one. You guys assemble one together. Yeah, hand me that towel. I definitely shot cheese all over my hand, but that's all right. That's fun.
Don't skimp on it.
Yeah, don't skimp on the meat.
It's the best part.
All right, load them down with those veggies. let me jump in.
There's more veggies than steak.
Oh, look at that. Perfect.
Smells
All right. Those look great. Let's see what they look like on the inside. Get a little. Oh, yeah. You like it?
That looks good.
Looks good? Yeah. All right. Hey, guys, thanks for gorging with Gooch.
This has been a production of the students and staff at Lubbock ISD TV.